Presented to you is the City of Saginaw's fiscal year 21-22 proposed budget. Presenting on this budget will be myself, Yolanda M. Jones, and Brian Weiss, the budget analyst. Copies of the 21-22 proposed budget and opportunities for public input. Viewing of the budget can be seen at the City Clerk's office at 1315 South Washington Avenue. It's also available on the city's website at www.saginaw-mi.com. City Council sessions are on May 10th, 2021. Public hearings are on May 24th, 2021, and projected adoption is scheduled for May 24th, 2021. Email and citizen comments can be directed to 989-759-1784 or yjones@saginaw-mi.com. The fiscal year 22 proposed budget continues to reflect our commitment to provide quality service to our residents while preserving our organization's long-term financial viability. The total citywide budget is projected to be $132.4 million. This represents a $7.6 million or little more than 6% increase from the previous approved budgeted levels. General fund budget for fiscal year 22 is projected to be $37.79 million, and this represents an increase of $1.52 million or a little bit more than 4% from the 2021 approved budgeted levels of $36.27 million. Non-general fund budget accounts for approximately 71.46% of the total citywide budget. Increases can be seen in many different ways. The largest overall increase will be realized in the water operation and maintenance funds due to an anticipated bond issuance for construction projects and equipments. There are additions of new positions that are much needed, as well as reduction of staff due to elimination of grant funds. There's a 3 to 5% overall increase to active healthcare, a 3% overall increase to retiree healthcare. One of the significant increases can be realized in our pension costs. Non-sworn increases approximately $942,000. Police pension increases $566,000, while fire pension increases $315,000. It should be noted that most of the police and fire pension costs are realized in the general fund. There's also the addition of a new police grant, the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Grant Fund. Additional capital outlay for major streets and rubbish collection funds are also in the budget. We also have construction projects and major street funds as outlined on the April 12th council meeting by the city engineer. There's increase in the community development block grant funds due to the carryover of the current year entitlement dollars. The budget also reflects a 2% across the board increase, normal step and longevity salary increases. As we continue to present the budget, we will discuss more in detail by fund all the changes from the current fiscal year to the proposed 22 budget. This chart represents the resource allocation citywide. The breakdown of the $132.4 million is represented in the pie chart, where the general fund represents roughly 9% of the total citywide budget. Special revenue funds represents almost 20% of the total budget. And the largest part of the budget is represented in the enterprise funds, which consists of the boat launch, sewer, and water operation and maintenance at almost 46% of the total budget. Internal service funds represent 6% of the total budget, and fiduciary funds represents 0.03% of the total budget. Next, we're going to show you a slide on our current tax mills. And as you can see, the total tax levy for fiscal year 22 is projected to be the same as in fiscal year 2018 through 2021, which is at 14.8830. Consumer price index for tax year 2020 will be 1.9%. Although the city property tax remains relatively flat, there are slight changes to the additional funds received and the various brownfield capturing districts, as well as the new brownfield capturing districts of the city. This chart reflects the city's overarching strategic plan. In January of 2018, City Council, City Administration, and the members of the public identified their citywide strategic initiative for the next 5 years. The fiscal year 22 budget takes in consideration these objectives. Economic development of urban core is roughly $1.5 million. Neighborhood revitalization is roughly $7.5 million. Arts, culture, and recreation is a little over $400,000. Police and fire, $27.2 million. and utilities infrastructure at $30.7 million. So let's begin the discussion on the general fund. General fund representing roughly 29% of the total citywide budget. This chart reflects the historical city budget, and as you can see in fiscal year 22, the budget is at $37.79 million, and the overall citywide budget is at $132.4 million. Starting with general fund revenues on page 63 to 76, general fund budget for fiscal year 22 is projected at $37.79 million, and this represents an increase of $1.5 million, or a little more than 4% from the previous fiscal year. As in previous fiscal years, the three major revenue sources for this fund are property taxes, state shared revenues, and income taxes. Property taxes will be roughly $3.73 million for fiscal year 22, and this represents a 2.75% or $100,000 increase from the previous year. And this increase in property taxes is directly related to a slight increase in property values. State shared revenues, which is 23.16% of the general fund revenues, are projected at $8.7 million. And this is an increase of $9,517 from fiscal year 21. This increase will be realized in the increase of the statutory revenue allocation from the state of Michigan. Income tax will be $14.23 million for fiscal year 22, and this represents a 3.22% increase from the previous year. This increase is due to the American Rescue Plan. The act allowed for the city to project revenues back to the fiscal year 2019 levels. This revenue source has been increased based on the historical trends. Grant revenues for fiscal year 22 are expected to increase by 0.93%, and the total allocation for grant funds is $1.9 million. And part of the grant funds you will realize and see is Medicare reimbursements, state fire protection, and local community stabilizations, and other grant revenues that be received in the general fund. License permits and fees will be $2.2 million for fiscal year 22, and this represents an increase of $123,000. And this increase is related to a slight projected increase in the non-owner occupied registration fees. Charge for services will be $1.18 million, and this is an increase of 8.14%. And this increase is directly attributed to the increases in cemetery revenues, which were approved in April of 2019. The addition of the Birch Park overtime detail, and revenues received for fire training services. Fines and forfeitures are expected to be $422,000 for fiscal year 22. Interest and rents are projected to decrease approximately $10,000, and this reduction is due in part to a decrease in land and building rentals. Reimbursements will be $3.89 million for fiscal year 22. This includes an indirect cost revenue increase of $279,000, as well as funds received from Covenant Healthcare for police officer salaries. Other revenues will be $273,850 for fiscal year 22, and this is a decrease of 10.46%. There will be operating transfers in from other funds of $124,000, and this consists of the allocation from the Community Development Block Grant for community police officers that this fund provides funding for, and a repayment to the general fund from the boat launch fund for the purchase of the kiosk system at the Lee Street boat launch. For fiscal year 22, approximately $330,000 will be appropriated for fund equity. This is for the capital purchases for the community public safety, police, and fire. In fall of 2020, the police and fire department received a significant donation from the Rutledge Trust Fund. These monies have been utilized to assist them with needed capital purchases. Now, moving on to general fund expenditures, we will be going over them by appropriation centers. And as you can see, listed is an overview of the expenditures in the general fund, and we will go by each appropriation center. On page 78 through 87, you will find the Office of General Government, which represents 7.36% of the total general fund expenditures. And these offices consist of City Council, City Manager, SGTV, Human Resources, City Clerk and Elections, City Attorney, Office of Management and Budget, and Marketing. The total fiscal year 22 proposed budget for these offices is projected at $2.78 million. These offices of general government increases roughly $41,000 from the approved fiscal year budget of 2021. This increase can be realized in increased pension costs, as well as the addition of staff in the Office of Human Resources. The city added an employment recruiter to the complement. However, this addition, the Human Resource Support Specialist part-time and the HRIS intern position will be eliminated. We also see a 2% across the board contractual increase and benefit increase. There was also a slight increase to the marketing budget due to reallocation of monies from other funds. To offset these increases will be a decrease in the election division overall budget, for there are no projected elections scheduled for the upcoming fiscal year. On pages 88 to 95, you will find the Department of Fiscal Services, which represents 8.16% of the general fund expenditures at $3.08 million. This is an increase of $55,596. This increase is largely due to increase in benefit costs, contractual wage increases, and increasing pension liabilities. On pages 96 to 105, you will find Community Public Safety Police, which represents 38.53% of the general fund expenditures. For fiscal year 2022, the budget will be $14.56 million, and this represents an overall increase of $771,000 or 5.6% from the previous year. The largest increase will be realized in personnel services. As previously mentioned, $566,000 increase to police pension obligation, which is approximately 12% increase from the previous fiscal year's required contribution. We will see a 3% increase to active and retiree health care, the normal 2% across the board contractual wage increase, as well as longevity and step increases. Funds have been added again for the Birch Park overtime detail, which will be offset by revenues that will be received. And billable overtime from the PSN grant continues to be budgeted, and this too will be offset by revenues. Roughly $200,000 has been added for the purchase of vehicles for fiscal year 22. These vehicles will be paid for from the restricted fund balance of the Rutledge Trust Fund. The debt service payment will also increase $16,765 for the payments on prior year's installment contracts on vehicles and camera systems. On pages 106 to 112, you'll find the Community Public Safety Fire. And fire represents 24.21% of the total general fund expenditures. For fiscal year 2022, Community Public Safety Fire will be $9.15 million of the general fund. This represents a net increase of $543,000. This increase is due in large part to a $315,000 increase in fire pension obligations, and this increase is 13.1% from the previous valuation. Similarly, this department will realize a 3% increase to active and retired health care benefits, the normal 2% across the board contractual wage increase, as well as longevity and step increases. They've also budgeted $150,000 in capital purchases in the budget, and this is for the repairs and renovations to the fire training facilities and training tower. These purchases will be offset by the appropriation of restricted fund balance from the Rutledge Trust Fund. On page 113 to 118, you will find the Department of Neighborhood Services, which represents 4.56% of the general fund expenditures at $1.7 million for fiscal year 22. This is a $18,633 decrease from the previous year. There are three divisions that make up the Department of Neighborhood Services and Inspections. They consist of planning and zoning, inspections, and parking operation and maintenance. For fiscal year 22, this department decreases a little more than 1% from the previous year. This decrease is largely realized in a reduction in the amount budgeted for demolition services. On page 119 to 130, you will find the Department of Public Services. That accounts for 10.27% of general fund expenditures. These divisions equate to $3.88 million. And this is a net increase of $132,769 from the previous year. This increase is due to the addition of 2 labor for cemeteries, a labor foreman for grounds, 2 celebration park coordinators. These additions are needed and are slightly offset by cemetery revenues and the elimination of 6 Celebration Park attendants. Furthermore, to offset the increase of staffing for the general fund, an office assistant 2 has been reallocated to the right-of-way, streets, and rubbish. Capital outlay increases slightly for this fund and have been appropriated for the shared purchase of a pickup truck for engineering. These costs are shared with streets. General fund expenditures, other general fund, account for 6.91% of the general fund budget. These divisions will equate to $2.61 million for fiscal year 22, and this represents a decrease of $6,186. This reduction will be realized in operating transfers out to other funds, specifically to the Unfunded Liability Fund and the Technical Services GIS Fund for general fund services. Special revenue funds. Special revenue funds account for proceeds from specific revenue sources that are legally restricted to expenditures for specific purposes. Special revenue funds represents roughly 20% of the total citywide budget and equates to $25.99 million. These funds increase in total by $2.4 million, or roughly 10.23% from fiscal year 21. Starting with the major street funds, which is found on page 132 to 157, Major Street Fund realizes an increase of $350,315 overall. Total budget is $7.97 million. This increase will be realized in normal contractual wage increases to include step and longevity increases, increased pension allocation, increases in professional and engineering services not tied specifically to a project, motor pool charges that are slightly decreased by street resurfacing charges, purchases of replacement claw truck, and an increased planned construction project. For more information on all street projects that are planned for the upcoming fiscal year, please refer to the fiscal year 22 major and local street presentations by the Director of Public Services, Phil Carwatt. Local street funds, that's budgeted at $1.82 million, and this is a decrease of $232,881. This reduction is due to a reallocation of staff to the Major Street and Rubbish Collection Fund, a decrease in projected costs from local street resurfacing projects. This reduction is slightly offset by the reallocation of an office assistant to an administrative professional. Furthermore, there will be a $5,424 increase to principal interest payments for this fund. For more information on all the street projects that are planned for the upcoming fiscal year, please refer to the fiscal year 2022 major and local street presentation by the Director of Public Services, Phil Carwatt. On page 158 to 170, you will find your Rubbish Collection Fund. The Rubbish Collection Fund will be budgeted at $5.05 million. This is an increase of $511,169, or roughly little more than 11%. Revenues from household rubbish fees increased from $2.3 million in fiscal year 21 to $2.6 million due to an annual fee increase from $220 per household unit to $230 per household unit. Current household unit is $18,589. This will also be a higher appropriation of fund balance from fiscal year 21. $403,000 was appropriated for fund balance for fiscal year 21. $451,000 will be appropriated for fiscal year 22. On the expenditure side, the largest increase we realized in the category of capital outlay. For fiscal year 22, the capital outlay budget is projected at $424,600. The department plans to replace the following items: a skid steer in the Environmental Improvement Division, a loader, and a rear packer truck that will be split between multiple divisions within the fund. Operating services will increase approximately $215,000, and this is largely due to an increase in the rate that the city pays to Mid-Michigan Waste Authority. To offset this increase will be a reduction to debt service payment, as well as a net decrease in personnel services due to the elimination of a vacant office assistant 2 position. For more information on the Rubbish Collection Fund, please refer to the fiscal year 22 Rubbish Collection Fund presentation by the Director of Public Services, Phil Carwatt. These presentations will be listed on the city's website. On pages 171 to 176, you will find the Public Safety Fund. The resource allocation for the Public Safety Millage Fund will be $2.872 million. This is an increase of $42,348 from the approved fiscal year 21 budget. This increase is due to a projected increase in real property tax revenues. To offset this increase with the same increase to expenditures for salary and benefits for 30 police and fire personnel. Please note that this levy was renewed on March of 2020. And as you can see from this chart here, total personnel complement for the Public Safety Millage Fund is 30 FTEs for 2022, which is the same as the previous year. On pages 177 to 197, you will find the public safety grant funds that total $657,229. The police training fund decreased $5,000 from the approved 2021 budgeted levels, from $14,000 to $9,000. This decrease is a result of the review of the historical trends of only spending around $9,000. The drug forfeiture fund is budgeted at $31,000 for fiscal year 22. And this is a decrease of 54% from the previous year. This reduction is due to a decrease in the amount of available fund balance. The Saginaw TAPS grant will be budgeted at $5,000 for fiscal year 2022. This is a $202,000 reduction from the previous fiscal year. This decrease is a direct result of the city being notified that the funding will not be available after September 2020. As a result of this change, 2 police officers will be eliminated from the budget. New for fiscal year 21 is the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Grant Fund, which is projected to be $150,000. The purpose of this grant is to provide support of broad range activities, including preventing, preparing, and responding to the coronavirus. This grant allows for the projects and purchases included, but not limited to, overtime, equipment such as law enforcement and medical personnel protective equipment, supplies like gloves, masks, and sanitizers, as well as for training and travel expenditures. On pages 198 to 209, you will find the Anderson Enrichment Center and Saginaw Arts Enrichment Commission as well as the Clean Energy Coalition funds. The Anderson Enrichment Center is projected to be $86,000 for fiscal year 2022. This is a $2,579 decrease from the previous fiscal year. This decrease is due to reduction in planned capital purchases. The Saginaw Arts and Enrichment Commission budget is $199,265 for fiscal year 22. This is a $1,000 increase from the previous fiscal year. On pages 210 to 217, you will find the TIFA, LDFA, DDA, and Brownfield Authority funds. Starting with the Brownfield Authority Fund, which is budgeted at $63,009, this is an increase of $4,334. And this increase is due to an increase in real property tax values within these districts. For fiscal year 22, we will also realize the inclusion of Tax Capture District 17 for the 700 Court Street Brownfield, that is the medical office. The DDA, or Downtown Development Authority 2011 budget will be $171,824 for fiscal year 22. This is an increase of $20,554 from the previous fiscal year. And this increase is due to a slight increase in real and personal property taxes. Community Development Block Grant. Community Development Block Grant starts on page 221 to 243. The total CDBG funds will equate to $6.36 million for fiscal year 22. This is an overall increase of $1.79 million. CDBG fund itself will be $3.78 million, and this is an increase of $1.32 million from fiscal year 21. This increase is due to a carryover of unspent funds from the current fiscal year. For CDBG residential, which is budgeted at $669,177, you will realize an increase of $87,508. This fund sees an increase in loan disbursement for the city housing rehabilitation program. The home program that's budgeted at $909,965 will see an increase of $9,883, and this is for a higher appropriation of federal entitlement dollars. SCDC, or Saginaw Economic Development Corporation, or revolving loan fund, will be $1.0 million for fiscal year 22. This is an increase of $370,000 from the prior year. This increase is a direct result of an increase to the loan disbursements. On pages 244 to 245, you will find your unfunded liabilities fund. The unfunded liability funds will be $196,882 for fiscal year 22. This is the same as in the previous year, and this is meant for the city's OPEB obligation. On pages 247 to 248, you will find your capital project fund. The capital project fund accounts for financial resources that are used for long-term investment projects, requiring large sums to acquire, develop, improve, and/or maintain capital assets. Revenues is received through transfers from the general fund, street funds, rubbish collection funds. The total is $496,121 for fiscal year 22. This is a $19,267 increase. This increase is related to an increase in the amount to be paid for the required principal and interest payments on the various installment and bond issuances.
Hello, I'm Brian Weiss, and I am the budget analyst in the Office of Management and Budget. I will be going through the enterprise, internal service, and fiduciary funds today. And beginning with the enterprise funds, which are funds that account for services provided to the general public on a user charge basis. The total amount of these funds is about $61 million, or about 46% of the total citywide budget. And this is a $3.5 million increase from fiscal year 2021. The boat launch fund will be $25,000 in fiscal year 2022, and this is a $3,000 increase from the previous year, which is based on a trend of increased revenues in that fund. Next is the sewer operations and maintenance fund. And this fund will increase $350,000 to a total of $24.93 million. And this increase is due to an increase in planned capital purchases and an increase in debt service payments. These are offset by a slight reduction in operating services, most notably in construction projects. And for a more detailed explanation of changes in this fund, please refer to Phil Carwatt's presentation of the sewer fund. Next is the water operations and maintenance fund. And this fund will increase by $3.12 million from the fiscal year 2021 approved budget to a total of $35.68 million. Most of this increase is found in engineering services and construction projects and the surplus division in the upcoming year as part of a planned bond issuance to update water infrastructure. And once again, for a more detailed breakdown of this fund, please refer to Phil Carwatt's presentation on the water and sewer funds. Next are the internal service funds, and these funds account for goods and services provided by one department to another department. These are paid for on a cost reimbursement basis, and in total, these funds represent about 6% of the total citywide budget. Internal service funds can be found from between pages 289 and 322, and this chart shows a breakdown of each internal service fund within the city. The total budgets for this fund type equates to $7.95 million, which is an increase of about $194,000 from the previous year. I'll begin with the Public Services Building Fund on page 290. And this fund's expenditures are used to maintain the Public Works building for the divisions and departments that utilize it. The sole source of revenue for this fund is fees for services or rent that is charged to the divisions that occupy space in the building. The budget for this year is $567,823, and this is an increase of $221 from last year, which is due to personnel increases, which are offset by a reduction in capital projects for this year. Next is the Department of Technical Services, and there are two funds that are part of the Technical Services Department. You have Geographical Information Systems, or GIS, and Information Services, which is IS. And beginning with the GIS fund, this fund is projected to be about $327,000, and this is a decrease of about $18,000 from the previous year because of a decrease in operating services due to the completion of the purchase of software and online programming associated with GIS projects in 2021. The Information Services Fund generates revenue mostly through charges for services for the maintenance and support for all of their computers, phones, and printers. A small amount of revenue also comes from sales of old phones and equipment. Revenue from these charges will be $1.62 million in fiscal year 2022, and this represents a decrease of about $20,000 from last year. And this decrease is attributed to the reduction in capital outlay following the replacement of flooring in the IS department in fiscal year 21. This reduction is partially offset by increased salary and benefit costs. The Radio Operations Fund generates revenues through fees charged to user departments for maintaining and replacing radios. Revenues received in this fund will allow the city to acquire, install, and maintain two-way radio equipment. The total Radio Operations Fund will be $167,000 for fiscal year 22, and this is the same as the previous year. There are no planned replacements of the radio system in the coming year, so costs will remain roughly where they have been. The Motor Pool Operations Fund accounts for the acquisition and maintenance of vehicles and other motorized equipment. The only exception is the fire department, which requires specialized service for the fire trucks. The Motor Pool Operations Fund will increase $166,000 or 6.8% from the previous fiscal year. And this increase is caused by an increase in salaries and benefits, motor vehicle repairs, office supplies, and mechanic tool allowance. The Self-Insurance Fund accounts for the payment of insurance premiums and records the insurance claims liability and distribution of insurance costs to other city funds. This fund is projected to be $1.36 million, and this is an increase of $59,000 due to increasing insurance rates in the national market due to nationwide economic conditions. The Workers' Compensation Fund's revenues are based on a percentage of gross wages for all full-time employees. The city utilizes the median of industry rates to determine the percentage to assess to each employee job classification. Saginaw Bay underwriters assist the city with determining what those rates are. Revenues for this fund will be $1.3 million, and this is an increase of $5,838 in fiscal year 22. Next are the fiduciary funds, and these funds account for the administration of property or assets that are owned by entities other than the city. The total of all fiduciary funds is projected to be $34,910, and it is found in the cemetery endowment funds. The cemetery endowment funds account for legally restricted resources. 25% of cemetery revenues collected in the general fund are split and recognized in these funds, and these revenues can only be used for cemetery care purposes in accordance with the city charter. The endowment funds are projected to stay the same as the previous year.